Today, thank you again for the time and fellowship and receive your word. Times like this are very special to us, Lord, and we just thank you for loving us down at the cross to save our sins, Lord. I pray you just continue to bless us. I pray we hear the word that is spoken to us today, Lord. In your name we pray.
Thank you, Justin. Talking about David, he was a man who was devoted. And when you begin to read the Psalms of David and hear his relationship with the Lord, and as I oftentimes say, there's a difference between, come on, you're right on time, brother. There's a difference between religion and relationship. Relationship goes much deeper. A lot of times people have religion, and I've even heard people say things like, when they get flustered or get angry, they'll say, well, I'll lay my religion down. Well, there's a difference between the relationship and religion. Religion is the institution, religion is the organization, but the relationship is the intimacy and the fellowship and the walk with God. David was a man who didn't just have religion, he had a relationship, he had a love for God. So now, here's this David's prayer. This is a prayer of David in Psalm 61. He says, hear my cry, O God, attend unto my prayer. From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee. Now you see that term cry twice. In other words, there's a desperation, not a cry of boo-hoo or a cry of sorrow, but a desperation. And I said this on Sunday, that desperation brings us to another level. The story was told, I'm going to finish reading this in a second. The story was told to me years ago of a man who was in his automobile and had his family in the car, and he hit an ice patch, and the car slipped, skidded, and flipped over. And even though the car was upside down, the man was able to crawl out from underneath it through the window. But he heard the desperate cries of his family in the car. And they said that the man, out of supernatural strength, was able to grab the car, push it, and pushed it over. Now somebody said, well, how did that happen? Well, ordinarily it wouldn't happen. But I think a lot of times desperation can bring things out of us that we don't always know that are there. Sometimes a desperate situation can make you do things that you otherwise would not do. And again, bring a strength out of you that wasn't there. David's cry was not a cry of sorrow. It was a cry of desperation. And the reason why is because of this. He says, when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. In other words, overwhelmed means to be about to be swallowed up. So circumstances are about to get the best of me. Circumstances are about to overtake me. I'm in a desperate situation. And because I'm in a desperate situation, I'm about to be swallowed up. So I cry desperately, lead me to a higher ground. Lead me to a higher rock. In other words, situations around you, gentlemen, may not change. But God is able to change you in the midst of the situation. The circumstance may not change, but God can deliver you and rise you above the circumstance. How many of you all are familiar with the Hebrew boys in the fiery furnace? Anybody familiar with that story in the Bible? I'll tell it anyway. The young men that would not bow to Nebuchadnezzar because he had set up an idol god, they made up their mind that they were not going to bow. Well, the punishment was severe. The punishment was, if you don't bow to my idol, I'm going to have you thrown in a furnace of fire, what the Bible would call a fiery furnace. Now think of how desperate that is. And yet these men would rather face that horrible consequence of death than to bow. So they went to the fiery furnace. And guess what happened? God delivered them not from the furnace. He delivered them in the furnace. In other words, the fire continued to burn, the fire continued to consume, but it didn't burn them. And when Nebuchadnezzar looked in, who had cast him in, he said, wait a minute, he said, didn't we put 3 guys in? He's talking to the guys, his God. He said, yeah. He said, well, look, I see 4 men in there. He said, the 4th one looks like the Son of God. In other words, the Lord went into the furnace with these men and preserved them in the midst of the fire. And a lot of times that's what God does. A lot of times deliverance is not necessarily deliverance from, it's deliverance in. It's delivered in the midst of. So you may be in a bad situation. You may be in bad circumstances. You may be in bad trouble. But the Lord promised that he would never leave or forsake you. And so he would deliver you in the midst of it. Psalms 23, we all know that. David said, yea, though I walk through the valley in the shadow of death, what? I will fear no evil because what? The Lord is with me. So what did he say? God did not deliver him from the valley. God was with him in the valley. And so even in life itself, when we go through the struggles and the hard times, the trials and the tribulation, the Lord promised he'll always be there. And this is the thing that I love about this, is that God is God on the mountain just like he's God in the valley. He's the same God. He doesn't change. God is the God that delivers in big things as well as the God that delivers in small things. He's still the same God. So even though we may be suffering situations, God does not suffer with what we suffer with. You know, sometimes we begin to age, and I'll tell you a story. In fact, one of the reasons why I missed Monday's game, because I had to see the doctor about my knees. These old knees, you know. My knees, you know, started to getting an age where that arthritis is starting to step in, you know. And so, you know, I had to go and check it out and things like that. And what's interesting about that, I oftentimes would say when I was a younger man, I say, you know, even when the aches and pains began to set in, of course, not speaking as I've experienced at the time, because I had not experienced those type of aches and pains yet, but even when those aches and pains began to come, the same God that was with you in your youth and that blessed you in your youth and gave you strength is the same God when things begin to go wrong. He made this body. And because he made this body, he can fix this body. And that's why I believe that God is able to heal. And if God does heal, he's God. If he doesn't heal, he's still God. But I'm still going to serve and praise him because of my relationship with him. And so going back to what David said, overwhelmed, about to be swallowed up, about to be overtaken. That's what overwhelmed means. About to drown. One is overwhelmed. He's at a disadvantage. He says, but all I want you to do, Lord, is take me to higher ground. Some things may not change. You know, I oftentimes think about the fellow who wanted God to, you know, and then this was his prayer. He wanted God to kill everybody that did him wrong. All the people that did him wrong, God's going to kill you. Well, God's not a hitman. God's not going to just start wiping people out because they do you wrong. Some of those very same people are going to outlive you. But you know what the Lord will do? He'll fix you so you can deal with them. He'll fix your attitude. You know, gentlemen, it's a very true saying, and even though it's not directly quoted from the Bible, it's a very true saying that attitude determines altitude. You know, how you deal with the situation determines how you're going to overcome or whether you become the victor or the victim. This, of course, even is in sports, you know, how you deal with the situation, how you deal with your injuries, how well you're going to come back if you're injured, how am I going to discipline myself, or even as you made it through college and have made it to the pro level and been blessed to be at this level, but you realize that there was sacrifice you had to make there. You realize there were times you had extra time in the gym and working on your game, trying to get together to bring out the best potential, because nobody ever made it on raw talent. I can name guys in high school I went to school with that had raw talent, but they would not sacrifice. They would not maintain. They would not go the extra mile. And so you are where you are because of what you've been blessed to do. But always remember, the same God that blessed you, because you're blessed by God, the same God that blessed you can take you to the next level. And you don't ever want to forget, it's him that brought you. It's him that blessed you. It's him that smiled upon you. And it's him that continues to bless you. So again, David says, and I say it's my closing, hear my cry. I'm crying out of desperation. I'm calling on you. And gentlemen, there's no shame in calling on God. There's no shame in crying to God. There's no shame in reaching out to him. Why? Because he's greater than us. He knows everything about us. He knows where we are. He knows where we've been. He knows where we're going. He's God. He's always God. Amen. Do you have any thoughts, any prayer requests? I want to interject this too as well. Our senior chaplain, the founder of our chapel here in Chicago, Reverend Henry Souls, is in hospice. They don't expect him to make it. He's 80 years old. He's the one that introduced me, brought me to the Bulls as chaplain 35 years ago. I would have done this 35 years occasionally. You know, so I was there Saturday to see him. His wife is there with him. So they expect him to make a transition. But we want to remember him, his family, He has no children. His wife, Effie, is very faithful to him, and she's there. So we want to remember them in prayer as well. Do you have any other thoughts, any prayer requests? All right? All right, let's lift to the Lord. Lord, we glorify you. We thank you. We thank you again that you continue to bless us, that you continue to smile upon us, that you continue to open these doors throughout the league, that we might share the gospel. And I pray that this word, as I've attempted to share it and minister it, that would come alive in us, that we would cry, Lord, out of desperation, that we would cry out of sincerity, even when we're going through our trials and our tests, that we would ask you, Lord, that you would give us strength to rise above. Circumstance may not change, but help us to rise above, that we might deal with every situation that comes our way. Our faith and our trust is in you, and we realize that you'll never leave us alone, but you'll never leave us by ourselves. We thank you for your blessing. We thank you for your strength and your courage. Bless these brothers as they play tonight. Let every man play to the best of his ability that you've given them. Keep them from injuries. And I thank you. Bless their travel. Bless their families abroad as they travel. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
God bless you, gentlemen and ladies.